Unless things change, we will not survive. Those are not my words. Those are the words of Koji Sato, the CEO of Toyota, the biggest automaker on the planet. A company that sells 11 million vehicles a year and just posted $31 billion in operating profit. And he stood in front of 700 executives from nearly 500 supplier companies and told them point blank that the entire auto industry is in a fight for survival. But here's the part that should genuinely scare you. Toyota is not the only one saying it. To understand what this means for the car you drive and the price you pay for it, we need to go back to March 25th, 2026, Toyota's annual supplier summit in Japan. This is not some casual industry mixer. This is the meeting where Toyota sits down with 484 of its most critical supplier companies and lays out the game plan for the year ahead. About 700 executives packed into that room. Normally, this meeting is about efficiency targets and quality benchmarks. It is a pep talk with spreadsheets. This year was different. Koji Sato walked up to the podium and basically told everyone they are in trouble. His exact words were that the auto industry is battling for its very survival. He called it a difficult battle and said they must transform how they fight or they will not make it. He told the room that Toyota continues to keep customers waiting for vehicles and that many of those delays come from equipment failures and quality breakdowns at both Toyota and its suppliers. And this was not just Sato being dramatic for effect. Kinta Khan, the man who took over as Toyota's new CEO on April 1st, 2026, stood up right after him and doubled down. Khan had just been promoted from Chief Financial Officer. This is a numbers guy, and the first thing he said in his new role was that despite selling 11 million vehicles and generating massive profits, Toyota is not in a secure position. He said the only path forward is to lower the company's break-even point and rebuild what he called Toyota's weakened competitive foundations. That is the incoming CEO of the most successful car company on the planet telling you he inherited a company that is not strong enough. Can you believe that? But what Toyota actually did next is the part that made my jaw drop. Because talk is cheap. Every CEO gets up and gives a doom and gloom speech to squeeze more out of suppliers. That is basically a corporate tradition at this point. But Toyota did not just talk. They launched something called Smart Standard Activity. And if you know anything about Toyota, you know why that name matters. For decades, Toyota has been the gold standard of manufacturing quality on Earth. The entire global auto industry spent 40 years trying to copy Toyota's production system. Just-in-time delivery, Kaizen, zero defects. These are Toyota inventions that every business school in the world still teaches today. And now Toyota is voluntarily abandoning parts of that system. Under the old rules, Toyota's suppliers were throwing away headliner boards because of tiny black spots nobody would ever see. Steering wheels got rejected over resin wrinkles that were literally invisible to the naked eye. A purchasing manager named Shoji Nishihara told reporters that suppliers were dumping roughly 10,000 wire harnesses every single month because of minor plastic discoloration on parts that customers never even look at. 10,000 every month in the trash. And Toyota just said, stop doing that. Relax the standards. Cut the waste. I think that is one of the most telling moments in the modern auto industry. The company that built its entire identity on perfection just told the world that perfection is too expensive now. And here is the line that keeps rattling around in my head. Multiple outlets reported the same observation, and I think it nails the whole situation. For decades, the global auto industry tried to become more like Toyota. Now Toyota is being forced to become more like China. And they are not the only ones scrambling. But more on that in a minute.
The reason why comes down to numbers that are honestly hard to believe. China does not just compete in the auto industry. China controls the supply chain that every automaker on Earth depends on. According to the International Energy Agency, China was responsible for about 80% of all global battery cell production in 2024. 80%. One country.
Almost 85% of all cathode active materials come from Chinese facilities. Over 90% of global anode production, which is mostly graphite, runs through China. And when you zoom out to the broader critical minerals picture, it gets even worse. China controls roughly 70% of refining across 19 of the 20 most strategically important minerals on Earth. In rare earth magnets, the ones that go into your electric motors, your power seats, your speakers, your windshield wipers, your ABS system, basically every moving component in a modern vehicle, China's share of sintered permanent magnet manufacturing sits at about 94%. 20 years ago, that number was around 50%. They doubled their grip in a single generation. That is not competition. That is a chokehold. And if you think those numbers are just abstract statistics that do not affect your daily life, wait until you hear what happened when China decided to actually use that leverage. April 2025. China placed 7 rare earth elements in downstream magnets under export licensing controls through the Ministry of Commerce. That sounds like boring trade policy until you see what happened on actual factory floors in the United States. Ford had to idle its Chicago assembly plant, the one that builds the Explorer, for roughly 3 weeks. There was no drop in demand. There was no recall. Ford simply could not get the magnets they needed to finish the vehicles sitting on their own assembly line. Ford CEO Jim Farley went on Bloomberg TV in June 2025 and said the situation was day-to-day. He said Ford had to shut down factories because they could not get high-power magnets. Magnets that go into speakers, seat motors, wiper motors, basic components. Then the Nexperia crisis hit in the fall. A Dutch-owned chip maker with Chinese ownership got seized by the Dutch government. Beijing retaliated with its own export controls. Honda had to halt production at its plants in Celaya, Mexico and Alliston, Ontario. Volkswagen, Nissan, Mercedes, BMW, Renault, and Volvo were all on the edge of their own shutdowns. Imagine showing up to work on a Monday at one of those plants and being told to go home because your entire production line just got held hostage by a trade dispute happening on the other side of the world. That is what thousands of auto workers live through. People with mortgages and car payments and kids in school, getting sent home with no timeline for when work starts again. And nobody in charge warned them it was coming. But the shutdowns are only half the story. Because while the factories were going dark, the price tag for all of this was quietly getting dumped on your lap. Now, pile the tariff situation on top of all of this. The United States currently maintains a 100% tariff on Chinese-made electric vehicles under Section 301. On top of that, there is a 25% Section 232 national security tariff on all imported vehicles and auto parts. Stack those together, and Chinese-made EVs face over 125% in combined tariffs just to enter the American market. That effectively slams the door shut. Section 301 also jacked up duties on Chinese EV batteries and battery components to 25%. Semiconductors and solar cells to 50%, and natural graphite in permanent magnets to 25%, with more phases kicking in through 2026. The European Union hit Chinese automakers with their own countervailing duties, ranging from about 7.8% on Tesla's Shanghai-built vehicles up to 35.3% on cars from SAIC on top of the existing 10% base duty. And here is what all of that actually costs you. AlixPartners, one of the biggest consulting firms in the auto industry, estimated that tariffs alone are adding roughly $30 billion in costs across the industry for 2026. About 80% of that gets passed straight to the buyer. That works out to approximately $1,760 tacked onto the price of every new vehicle sold in America. And the average transaction price for a new car already crossed $50,000 for the first time ever back in September 2025. 50 grand for a new car. Let that math hit you for a second. Honestly, I think the regular buyer is getting squeezed from every direction at once, and nobody in Washington or Detroit is losing a single minute of sleep over it. But here's where this story goes from a Toyota problem
to something much bigger. And this is the part that made me sit back in my chair when I was researching this video. Because it turns out that Toyota was not even the first automaker to say this out loud. They were just the most credible. Ford CEO Jim Farley has been sounding the alarm since the summer of 2025. At the Aspen Ideas Festival in June, he called China's EV progress the most humbling thing he had ever seen in his career. By October, he went on CBS and said something that I do not think any American auto executive has ever said publicly before. He said China has enough existing factory capacity to serve the entire North American market. Every car, every truck, every SUV. He said they could put every American automaker out of business. Those are his words. Then you have General Motors. Reuters reported in November 2025 that GM has ordered several thousand of its suppliers to completely eliminate Chinese-sourced parts. Semiconductors, sensors, castings, wiring harnesses, lighting, interior electronics, even fasteners. GM set a 2027 deadline for some of those components. CEO Mary Barra framed it as supply chain resiliency. But you do not set a 2-year deadline to rip out an entire country from your supply chain unless you are genuinely afraid of what happens if you do not. And then Honda. Honda's CEO Toshihiro Mibe reportedly toured a nearly fully automated supplier facility in Shanghai and came back and told his team they have no chance against Chinese manufacturing. No chance. From the CEO of Honda. And you want to know what they are all looking at? BYD. The Chinese automaker that most Americans had never heard of 5 years ago just outsold Tesla in battery electric vehicles for the full year in 2025. BYD delivered about 2.26 million battery electric vehicles, while Tesla sold about 1.64 million. That is a gap of over 600,000 cars. And BYD's total new energy vehicle sales, including plug-in hybrids, hit roughly 4.5 million units. 3 of the biggest automakers on Earth are all saying the same thing at the same time. Toyota just happened to say it loudest. And I think that is the moment you have to stop and ask yourself whether these companies are overreacting or whether they have been underreacting for the last 10 years, and this is the first time they are being honest about it. I know where I land on that one. And Toyota is not panicking from a position of weakness, which honestly makes the whole thing even more unsettling. This is the #1 automaker on the planet by volume. They sold roughly 10.5 million Toyota-branded vehicles in 2025, about 11.2 million when you include their subsidiaries. Revenue for their fiscal year ending March 2025 came in at around 48 trillion yen, which is roughly $314 billion. Operating profit was about $31.3 billion. Their hybrid bet has paid off spectacularly. Toyota sold approximately 4.4 million hybrids globally in 2025, and no other automaker is even close. That is 27 million hybrids sold since the original Prius, a car that people laughed at for years. In the US alone, electrified vehicles accounted for 47% of all Toyota and Lexus sales, about 1.18 million units, up almost 18% year over year. Meanwhile, Ford's EV division alone lost around $5.5 billion in a single year trying to chase the same electric future that Toyota said was not ready yet. And Ford was so worried about falling behind that Jim Farley personally shipped a Xiaomi SU7 from Shanghai to Ford's headquarters in Chicago, just so his engineers could take it apart and see what they were up against. That is how real the Chinese threat is. A Detroit CEO importing a competitor's car from China just to study it like a textbook. And Toyota has been promising a solid-state battery since 2020 that would deliver over 600 miles of range and charge in 10 minutes.
That timeline has slipped to 2021, then 2023, then 2026, and now 2027 or 2028. I will believe that one when I see it roll off the line. But the point is that Toyota is sitting on a mountain of cash, selling more cars than anyone, dominating the hybrid market that their competitors dismissed for years, and they are still telling their own suppliers that survival is not guaranteed. If the strongest company in the room is saying the floor might collapse, maybe it is time to check the foundation.
So what does all of this actually mean if you are a normal person who just needs a reliable vehicle that does not bankrupt you? It means the car you buy next is going to cost more, come with fewer features, and take longer to show up at the dealership. The components that are most exposed to Chinese supply chain risk are the ones built into almost every modern vehicle: power seats, audio systems, LED headlight controllers, ABS braking modules, electric power steering motors, EV battery management systems. Every single one of those depends on either rare earth magnets or specialized semiconductors that overwhelmingly flow through China. And when those parts get held up, whether by tariffs or export controls or political standoffs, the assembly line stops. Ford already proved it in Chicago. Honda proved it in Mexico and Canada. The 2021 semiconductor shortage cost the global auto industry an estimated $210 billion in lost revenue and about 7.7 million vehicles worth of lost production. And most suppliers only keep 2 to 4 weeks of chip inventory on hand, so when the supply gets cut, the production lines go down almost immediately. That was a warning shot, and instead of truly fixing the problem, most of the industry just waited for the shortage to end and went right back to business as usual. Toyota was actually the one company that learned from that crisis. After the 2011 Fukushima earthquake wiped out their supplier network, they started stockpiling chips, deliberately breaking their own just-in-time rules. But even Toyota's buffer only buys time. It does not solve the fundamental problem. And meanwhile, consumers on the other side of the world can buy a BYD Seagull for about $10,000, a fully electric vehicle packed with technology that most American buyers cannot touch at any price because tariffs block it from ever reaching a US dealership lot. So while Chinese buyers are getting more car for less money, American buyers are paying $50,000 for vehicles with missing features built from parts that might not even be available next quarter. The industry had a decade to diversify. It did not. And now every automaker on the planet is scrambling to fix in 2 years what they should have been building for 20. And you are the one paying for it. Kenta Kon just took over as Toyota's CEO, and his first 100 days will tell us whether this survival talk turns into real action or just another boardroom speech. Subscribe so you do not miss that breakdown.